Welcome to the Awaken Sober Podcast. It's a podcast about life and recovery through Christ. Glad you guys all decided to join us tonight. And then for all you people out there that are new, welcome. Those of y'all that have been listening before, welcome back. So today we got a special feature for you today. We got a special guest speaker. Casey, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad to have you here.
What's up, fellas?
Before we get started, man, Mike.
What's up?
Mike with us today. So for those of y'all that, if you notice who's all here and that, we have Steve.
I'm back.
A couple guys are not here this week, so we got Shane on the sound. If y'all like the way we sound, let him know.
Big Shane.
Shout out to Sugar Shane.
So we get started off with this. Mike, how was your week, man?
Started off a little rough. Yep. Had some relationship issues going on, but you know what? The beauty of it is, last time if something like this would have happened, I would have went straight to the bottle. This time, I'm not going to lie, I thought about drinking, but it was for about 15 seconds. Completely fleeting thought. And called my support system and got right with it, got right with the Lord. Started talking to her. We actually started reading a book together to work on our communication, and ever since it's been good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Nice. Steve, welcome back.
It's nice to be back.
How's your week been going, man?
Oh, been dealing with my dad. Fell and broke his shoulder last week, and not shoulder. I'm sorry, he broke his elbow. So he's in a treatment center right now, or rehab. I get the words confused. He's in a rehab.
A physical rehab.
Physical rehab, yeah. He can't. He's 87. Has doing this, pushing up and stuff doesn't work when you have a broken elbow and you got to rely on a walker and stuff like that. I tell you what, it's been really tough dealing with some of that. I mean, the man that you looked up to when you were young and that was a strong person, and then all of a sudden you're the one that has to be the strong person, and it's that switch, and it just kind of gets to me sometimes, and I'm just dealing with that, just taking that all in and trying to figure that out.
All right. Cool. Casey,
What's up, brother?
how was your week, man?
My week was interesting, man. I had pretty much the whole week off, but not off. I was doing a certified peer support specialist training, and I don't know, man. Other than that was warping, by the way. I don't know if you guys have done Zoom. I know Shane has, but I don't know who else has done Zoom training, man. 8 hours of that, or 6 hours plus the videos and stuff. That was more exhausting than running around for 10 hours at the treatment center.
Yes, it is.
Man, I can imagine. We did that Zoom when we were doing our pastoral counseling class, and we were doing that in 8 hours all day. I'm ready to fall asleep.
Yeah, bro, and for every 1 minute of great information, there was probably about 3 minutes of stuff that you've already lived and gone through and experienced and working in a treatment center. So it was tough to stay engaged, to say the least.
So this week we're going to be doing an interview with Casey. Casey co-works with us in that. It's been a pleasure working with him. So we're going to get to know a little bit about you today, Casey.
Sounds good, brother.
All right.
Put you in the hot seat.
So where was you born? What was life like? Did you have a spiritual upbringing?
So I was born in 1995, a cold January 7th morning, baby, at St. Joseph West in Lake St. Louis. Shortly after being born, we actually moved from O'Fallon to Lake St. Louis, and I was born in a Catholic/Lutheran household where my mom practices Catholicism, so we were going to Catholic church every Sunday, baby, until about second grade. And then second grade comes around, and so back into the backstory a little bit. My mom and dad were not planning on having a third kid by any means. My brother and sister call me an accident. My mom and dad used to call me a surprise, which is a very friendly way to say accident. But anyway, so they had their life pretty well carved out, man. I don't know if they were planning on moving or not, but when I came around, you need another bedroom, homie. So we moved to Lake St. Louis. But they were budgeted for a family of 2 children and, my mom and dad. So whenever I came around, wallet got a little tighter. And my brother and sister would tell me, we used to do fun stuff before you came around. It's yeah, dude, they had a lot more money. But so they weren't really expecting to have another kid. Whenever I came on the scene, I surprised them. I'm 7 years younger than my older brother and 8 years younger than my older sister. My parents had me around 37 years old, so it was late in the game.
Okay.
Right on. So you said money got a little tighter, but with that in mind, what was your childhood like? You know, you kind of spoke a little bit about we used to have fun. We used to do fun things, right? Overall, what was your childhood like?
So overall, my childhood, it was kind of the tale of two cities, honestly. In the daytime, pretty normal life, pretty normal upbringing. At night, my parents were drinkers, kind of a family disease, you know. So my parents would drink, everything would kind of flip on its head a little bit. My brother and sister would kind of take control, and I would hang out with them a lot downstairs and kick it with them. So kind of the tale of two cities, man. Like in the morning time, pretty standard. And then at night, things shifted, and I hung out with my brother and sister a lot.
Right on.
So yeah, like were you into sports and stuff like that growing up? Did you guys do a lot of sports stuff?
Oh, yeah, brother. So from a very young age, I mean, going back in time, like my great uncle was the manager of the Baltimore Orioles. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And baseball is huge in my family, man. Baseball is huge. So at a very young age, I started playing ball. I think 4 years old, I started playing coach pitch. I skipped T-ball, and it was like immediately became a part of my life, and more so like it became a part of my identity. Like I was Casey, the baseball player.
Casey at the bat. Wasn't that like an old thing back in the day?
Yes,
I'm sure it was, yeah.
Casey at the bat. I know you guys have heard this before, man.
Oh, I heard it every day of my life. And if I ever struck out, my dad would go, "There is no joy in Mudville. Casey struck out." Thanks, man.
Right.
There's no pat on the back like an upset dad.
Oh, none at all.
Out.
Especially when they're the coach.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was one of my coaches. He was one of my coaches until later on in life, whenever alcohol started taking some more stuff from him. But yeah, he was a coach, and he used to hit the piss out of the ball at me, man. Everyone else in line, he'd hit it nice at him. He hit it at me as hard as he could. Get in front of it. All right, you're a grown man, dude. I'm 9.
Wow. That could be a bit rough. I could get it. But so like how old were you when you had your first drink?
So I waited a long time. Well, the first drink I accidentally took, my mom was cleaning out toothbrushes with rubbing alcohol by the kitchen sink, and she took the toothbrushes out. I thought it was a cup of water, so I slammed like rubbing alcohol. 3 years old. That was the first time I ever did it. But then I waited till I was about 17 because I was around alcoholism. Like I knew what it was like. I started doing drugs when I was about 13. I thought that was fine because alcoholism ran in the family. I didn't understand what addiction was. I just knew what alcoholism was because I had seen it. So I started smoking weed when I was 13. Around that time is whenever I started dabbling in pills whenever they would be brought up and whenever I saw them around. So 13 drugs, but 17 is whenever I finally took the first drink. And I was dating this girl. She wasn't much of a drinker, but she was like, I'd like to drink with you. And I was like, cool, I'll give it a shot. Almost immediately was an alcoholic. Like, I drank that night with her, pretty normal. We did our thing, whatever. And then the very next time I drank was when I was sad. I was super upset, and I went into my parents' room. I took out their bottle of vodka. I filled up an empty regular Gatorade bottle, like a standard 20 ounce or whatever it is. No idea about how much liquor that was for someone who had never drank, and I pounded like the whole thing in about an hour and a half. I was hanging out with a girl who I was best friends with in my neighborhood, and apparently the cops came and were talking to us whenever I was puking out the side of her car. I have no memory of that. I was so drunk. When I got home, I didn't want to go inside. I don't want my parents to know that I'm drinking. I've been saying I'm never going to drink in my life because all these different reasons, right? So I decided to stay outside, try and sober up. I guess I decided to pee on the side of my house. And I know that because I pulled down my pants, had to have killed that part of it, didn't lift up my shirt, peed all over my shirt. I woke up the next day with a huge pee stain on my shirt, and I smelled like urine, and my girlfriend came and picked me up and goes, "You smell like piss." And I was like, "This is your fault. You got me drinking, lady. You peeled the Band-Aid off of this thing."
The telltale sign of piss on your shirt.
Yeah, that's never a good thing.
By the way, I just realized this. I immediately blamed her. Immediately.
Deflecting. This is your fault. Yeah.
Zero
Of course,
accountability.
it's got to be someone else's fault.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of crossing the line. But when did drinking really cross the line in your life?
I
Or drugs. I mean, I don't know your story, so I'm kind of fresh hearing things. So I mean, when did it really kind of cross the line with addiction?
If you would have asked the younger me, I don't know what he would have said, but now looking back with a little more clarity, I would say I had a buddy whose dad was prescribed a bunch of pills, and I remember about 15 years old, somewhere in there. My home life's pretty chaotic at this point. Money's even tighter than it ever was. My brother and sister aren't there anymore, so now it's just kind of me and the parents. But there was a buddy I would always try and get out of my house and hang out with my friends. And one of them, like I said, his dad had a bunch of prescriptions. And one of my other friends and I would go in his room, go through all of his drawers and find his pills and just mix them and take them. And I was looking back, that definitely had to be whenever it was like, okay, this is not cute.
Yeah, it can get real ugly when you go that route.
Well, yeah, I had no idea. I was 15. I didn't know what OxyContin was. Like, I didn't know what any of that stuff was. I was mixing Adderalls with painkillers and stuff. Like, I'm pretty lucky to be alive.
Oh, absolutely.
What other coping mechanisms do you feel that you might have picked up over your times?
My number one coping mechanism throughout my life was baseball. Definitely. That was my outlet. That was my escape. Like I said, a huge part of my identity. In fact, moving forward, whenever I lost baseball, like I talk about it a lot, I think that was probably the biggest loss of my life, along with my father. My dad died of alcoholism, but I lost my baseball career right around the same time because I was taking care of him, and I honestly don't know which one affected me more.
Yeah, I get that. As a former player myself, when I lost that after a couple of years in college, it was brutal. And that's when I noticed that my drinking was like, okay, it's a problem. You know, around 20, 21, 22, it was really bad.
Oh, yeah.
So looking back, so we know some of the things, we know you started early, but now that you do have, which by the way, congratulations on a 1 year, which you just had recently, right? What was your sober date?
September 12th.
September 12th. So
Yeah.
Congratulations.
happy anniversary, man. That's awesome.
September 11th, actually, of 2022, your birthday, which I just realized the other day. Last year, I called you on your birthday and said, hey, man, I relapsed.
Yeah, you did.
Didn't say happy birthday.
No.
Didn't even recognize it was your birthday. You were probably, when the phone was ringing, you're like, oh, kick ass, dude. Casey's going to wish me a happy birthday.
Yeah, this is neat.
And instead, you picked up the phone. I was like, oh, no.
I messed up, dude.
I'm sorry.
Which I appreciate that though, but no, congratulations. I've been with you the last year, a little over a year, and dude, just keep it up because you're killing it. Yeah. But when we look back, can you decipher or kind of pinpoint what are some of the root causes that maybe started your addiction?
My addiction, like in its infancy, like really starting?
Yeah. So Steve talked about the line that it crossed.
Yeah.
Right. Can you discover or can you talk about a little bit about what the root causes were for maybe crossing that line to where it became truly a problem?
Neglect, trauma, and learned behavior, I would say, to sum it up. And that's not me trying to throw shade at my family at all. My family is my greatest support system. I love them so much. They were always trying to do the best with what they had. But, unfortunately, we're all imperfect people. And there were some miscues, possibly, from time to time in my childhood. And it made stuff interesting. And I think it laid out a path for me to cure what ailed me the way that I saw people do.
Yeah, I get that.
I saw people like, okay, this is what you do as an adult, like from a very young age. I was like, oh, this is how you take the edge off of the day. This is how you reward yourself for coming home after a long day of work. This is what adults do.
This is how you cope.
Yeah. And then by the time I was old enough to understand, oh no, that's not it. I was like, oh, well, it seems to work pretty well for them, man. Like, I don't know. If I would get hot and bothered, I'd be like, I gotta go take a shot. I gotta go drink. If something good happened, let's go drink about it.
Right.
It was just some of it learned, some of it through the upbringing, just things happening, and the hurts, the habits, the hang-ups were formed.
So leading up to your sobriety, what kind of what kind of led to that clarity of I'm not doing the right thing?
Oh man, looking back, there are so many different ones.
Where's that road? That's always the fun one to talk about.
There were a bunch of signs along the way that like, hey, Case, this is getting way out of control. I remember 19 years old. I was 19 years old, and my dad had a Christmas stocking with a bottle of Fireball in it for me. And before Christmas, I snuck into his room. I opened it up. Like, this is the moment I know that I was drinking really problematically, super alcoholically. Like, I started drinking alcoholically by drinking for my feelings and trying to get them to go away. But this kick-started me drinking every moment of every day that I was awake. At 19, I snuck in there. I got the stocking. I took the bottle of Fireball out. I drank it all. And I went that night, bought a new one, replaced it, drank the whole thing again, and had to buy another replacer for my bottle of Fireball. So, like, that was whenever stuff really started getting off the rails. But as far as a bottom goes, that didn't happen until years later. I was 26. Life had been miserable for a while for me. I didn't know who I was. I lost baseball when I was 21, lost my dad when I was 22. So for those years, man, from 21 to 26, I didn't know who the hell I was. I was just drinking all day, managing Stefanina's, and finally, like, it just slowly, everything's being taken away from me. I'm not hanging out with my best friends anymore who I grew up playing ball with. Isolating, miserable. Those suicidal ideations start to come in passingly from time to time. They start to gain a little bit of traction. They start to feel like a better idea as time goes on. And I remember one night I was in the garage with my brother and I said, I'm pretty sure I'm chasing Dad. He was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I'm chasing Dad and I'm going to win. I'm going to beat him to the grave. And he just stared at me, and I was like, damn, dude, I thought that was going to be a killer joke. Like, I didn't even realize, like, I was being dead serious. It wasn't a joke at all. I was actually scared. It was, my conscience went live and said, hey, man, you need to deal with this. Still didn't. A couple weeks later, my brother and I went on a vacation with some of his friends. When we got back, I'm supposed to go to work. I'm puking. I probably have alcohol poisoning, but instead of stopping, I just tried to get to a point where I could keep down more liquor and feel better. I was supposed to pick up my mom that night from work, and I went in my truck. I was like, man, this is a bad idea. I should not be driving right now. I backed up, hit my mailbox, didn't even get out of the driveway, and I was like, I can't do that. This is not going to work. So then I get on my cell phone, and I start trying to get an Uber to get my mom, and I was too drunk to figure out how to operate the Uber app. So my mom was sitting at her place of work waiting for her dumb drunk son that lives with her to come try and pick her up. So that night, I don't even remember what happened next. Honestly, I just kept drinking. But I called my sister and I just begged her, like, hey, I don't know what to do. I know you've been sober for a little while and in recovery for a while. I can't live like this. I'm gonna end everything if I don't get help soon. And if you're not here within about 15 minutes, I'm probably gonna change my mind. She was over there in about 15 minutes. Actually, I later find out that she got a hold of Shane, and Shane got me a bed at the aviary.
Mm-hmm. So what were the moments of clarity that, you know, that you were coming at you like, dude, this has got to be the point where I got to change?
I remember actually my last year playing baseball. I was taking ground balls at short. We were just warming up before a game. And the third baseman looks at me and goes, hey, man, you're a little flat today. Like, you're not moving like you normally do. I was like, I don't feel too well, dude. He goes, you never feel well. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he goes, you drink last night? And I was like, who's asking? Like, what are you, narc? We could go tell coach or something, man. Right. I'm playing short today. But he was like, you know, most people don't drink every day, Casey. And I was like, oh, man. That's tough. I'm not.
One guy does.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna tell you the truth anymore, man.
Right on. So we got a little bit backstory. So let's move up closer to your recovery, okay, where it started. And if you want to go back to, you know, where you first got into treatment, mm-hmm, or the treatment field, seeking treatment, what was like the lead up to that, or what is the kind of last year of your use? What did that look like?
The last year of my use was, I mean, I don't know how to even put it into words, but you guys, I'm sure, know what I'm talking about. I mean, I didn't recognize it at the time, but I was trying so hard to not have to feel anything. And I was on a path that led straight to suicide. I mean, there was no other way around it. That was where it was going to take me, because I wasn't going to wait for alcohol to take me. It was going to take way too long. I saw how miserable that was. I saw what it did to my dad. So I was like, it's either I figure out a way to live and actually be alive, or I'm done with this. So, like, my back was against the wall, man. It was like I have nothing else to lose. And I've been talking trash on my sister for years now. Like I was so miserable to her when she first got sober. It's something I still regret. I'll be like, I remember when you were fun. I remember when you used to hang out, man.
Right.
You're a dork now. You don't hang out with me and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even our sister. Like crazy stuff that I would say to her. And then the moment that all the chips were down, I had never thought about treatment before. I never entertained it. I never talked about it. But that night I was like, I'm going to either take my life or get better. And that's it. So I called Krista crying. I was like, I know I said a lot of stuff. But right now, I'm sorry.
Cry for help.
Big time, dude.
Yeah.
Cried for help big time. And I had no relationship with any sort of a higher power. I denounced God when I was 17, whenever my dad was in the hospital. That's a whole thing. But I denounced God, and I had no higher power. My higher power truly was my sister in that moment. Like I was calling out to my higher power, please help me.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what treatment was like for you? When you started treatment and then up till your latest recovery, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time?
What was treatment like? You went in, what did you
So which time?
How did it go?
The first time?
The first time you went into treatment, were you like, when your sister come to get you, they got you up in the area, were you ready to go?
I was ready to go, but I didn't have the slightest or faintest idea of what recovery was or what it required of me to actually do it. You know, I just didn't want to be such a bum anymore. I didn't want to hate myself so much. That was it. I didn't have an idea what it was. I didn't have an idea what I needed, what was required of me, like how I was going to maintain sobriety. Nothing. I just was afraid I was going to kill myself. I knew that I was going to if I didn't get help, you know? So it was kind of, I wanted help, but I didn't know what the hell help looked like.
How many times have you gotten sober?
3. That's all that I would count. Those are the 3 times I've been in treatment. I tried to stop drinking a couple of times on my own to absolutely no avail. I remember, I think I was 22, and my brother and sister and I did a sober competition. This was before I had ever admitted that I was actually an alcoholic, but I certainly was. But we had a competition to see who could go a month without using any substances that were problematic. I guess I should say you could smoke and use nicotine, but no weed, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing like that for a month. And we were doing a weight loss competition. And I remember like detoxing like for the first time in my life. And I stayed sober that month, but the day before the month was over, I bought a 5th of Fireball. And I had it in my freezer for the moment that midnight struck. So I would say I've only gotten sober 3 times at different treatment centers, twice at the Aviary, once at a place called Cottonwood, Tucson, because I relapsed as a staff member of the Aviary. That's the one that Mike and I were alluding to earlier. September 11th of 2022 is whenever actually Jeremy, one of the podcast hosts, right? Jeremy and Shane showed up at my apartment I didn't know that they were coming. Actually, this is the first time I'm going to be honest. I knew they were coming. Brianna told me they were coming, and I was like, I'm running. I don't want to see either of them. The worst thing about it is that they're not even going to be mad. I hope they're mad when they get here.
Right.
Because I don't want to deal with that. And they showed up real nice, real friendly, real polite. I acted like I didn't know they were coming. I knew they were coming, and I wanted to run so bad because I didn't want to face them at all. And I definitely didn't want to go get help. I was so convinced that I could do it on my own. Not a shot if I tried to do it on my own, looking back. But you tell him you tried to talk to Casey a year and a couple days ago, he was awfully confident.
Sure was. I remember it.
Yeah, he was an asshole. He's caused me a lot of issues.
That guy.
Yeah, man, he thinks a lot of himself sometimes.
So what has earlier sobriety been like? You know, you just celebrated a year, but what's the last year been like?
So the first time recovery was different because I didn't work a program. I didn't do anything. I just white-knuckled a year and 3 months, working in treatment, preaching a bunch of stuff I didn't actually practice. And this time around, it's been different, man. Like, last time when I got the coin, I joked about this, but I was like, F everybody, dude. I did it. I told you guys I could do it without you. And then this time I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I have everyone. That was exhausting trying to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like hanging onto the pull-up bar. It's just a matter of time until you slip and let go.
So was there something that clicked this time when you went to recovery last time?
Not at first. To be honest with you, not at first. Whenever I got out of Cottonwood, Tucson, I was telling Jeremy that I was, I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to do it right this time. I'm going to hit meetings and I'm going to get a sponsor and I'm going to work the steps and I'm going to do all this. And then I got home and didn't do anything different. I didn't even go back to work at the aviary because I was like, I don't want to go face these people. I let my fears control me. I still was like, I can do this on my own. I don't need that. And then one day I was in the car with my, at the time, girlfriend, and we're going home from her parents' house, and I could feel myself, like my blood was boiling. We were having an argument, one that I'm sure I was not helpful or innocent in. So I could feel my blood boiling though, man. And I was like, I'm going to freak out and I'm going to drink or I'm going to continue to act like this. And this is one of the attitudes and behaviors that I always tell clients. It's a part of active addiction and that you shouldn't engage in. I don't practice what I preach, and I'm going to relapse again. I know I'm going to relapse again if I don't get help. So I called Jeremy and I said, Jeremy, I trust your judgment. Who do you think should sponsor me, man? Do you have any ideas? And he tossed me out a gentleman named Rob. Rob's been my sponsor ever since. I've been working the steps this time around, actually have a sponsor, actually go to meetings, and I know that everyone out there listening, like, you're going to have to live it probably to understand that, but please don't. If just one person can hear me, don't try and prove anything to anyone. Nobody's going to give a shit if you end up doing it. Trust me, I did it for 1 year and 3 months. No one cared because it was just a matter of time. And then when I tried to do it again, I was not as happy. Like, working the steps makes it easier. If you're trying to play basketball alone against 5 guys, you're going to lose. Like, use your teammates, use your community, use these people, because you don't have to do it all on your own. And sorry, but you can't, and that's not a challenge.
So what have been speaking of challenges, what have been some of your biggest challenges in your recovery?
Pride.
As you've been started working the steps and all that, what's it been?
Pride and ego, no doubt. Pride and ego without a question. That's what always held me back, honestly. That was what kept me from asking for help. That was what kept me from engaging in the recovery community. That's what kept me from being friends with people like you guys, because I was like, nah, they're dorks. Being sober is stupid. Like, this dumb mindset that I had. I still just wanted desperately to get control over the substances so I could use them and prove that I had power over them. Every time, just proved my powerlessness. Every single time. With anything, too. And it wasn't even necessarily that it would lead me straight back to alcohol. Not always. Sometimes I would abuse the crap out of that for quite some time, depending on what it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever it was, man, like, I'm a poly substance abuser. I say I'm an alcoholic because that's what I did the most of, because it was so readily available. It was so easy to get. But nah, man, anything you put in front of me that was going to turn this off for a little while, so I didn't have to deal with how much I disliked myself. I didn't have to deal with the stuff that happened. I didn't have to deal with any of that. Anything that would shut it down, man.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about, the people or the professionals that you consider your support system, and what kind of support have they been able to offer you since you've been in recovery?
So as far as the professionals go, I would say, well, first of all, Shane, although he is, like, I consider him a friend of mine, I've looked up to Shane for quite some time. I looked up to Shane before he knew what my name was. Whenever I was at CR at Morningstar, I knew exactly who he was, and I looked up to him. My sister spoke very highly of him. And I was like, cool, I like that guy. He seems cool. Shane was actually the first person that I looked at sober, and I was like, recovery can be cool.
Right on.
So Shane's one of the big ones. There was a therapist named Bob.
I said bad judgment.
But there's a therapist named Bob at the aviary who helped me understand some things about myself, and just a super incredibly knowledgeable guy. He taught me DBT skills so I could learn how to catch, check, and change some of the nonsense going on in my head that I just kept perpetuating and strengthening the belief in over and over again when it was all fake. Chelsea Wire, another therapist who helped me just a great deal to understand, like, hey, you're not cool or brave by running from your feelings. It's not cool. It's not brave. It's not cute. And it finally clicked one day where I was like, she obviously never said this, but it clicked one day in my head where I was like, Casey, you running and hiding from your feelings all the time is cowardice. Whether you admit it out loud or not, like, that's true. You feel and think those things. So just putting on a tough face and acting like nothing bothers you makes you a coward. you're not expressing how you truly feel. How you truly feel is you're terrified. You're sad. You don't know what the hell you're doing in your life.
So, Casey, how is, excuse me, how's your experiences with addiction and recovery affected your relationships with family, friends?
So luckily, man, like a lot of people get into recovery, and especially like people who abuse a lot of different stuff, they have to kick a lot of people out of their lives because a lot of their people, places, and things need to change. I was the only person, brother, who really needed to change, you know? Like, my parents were always alcoholic, but that's their thing. Like, I'm not gonna cut my mother off, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna, my dad has been passed since I was 22, so long before I ever got sober. So the only thing that it's affected is, like, sometimes I can't be around people when they're drinking for as long. So, like, if that's a family member, sometimes that's a family member. Whenever they start to get to that point, I'm like, I gotta get out of this room.
So one thing we're really big about at Reclaiming Hope is we about families. You know, Jeremy likes to say the good old thing that addiction is not a spectator sport. Sometimes, you know, one day the whole family's going to be involved.
Oh yeah.
So what was that like for you?
Well, for a while it was really cool, honestly, because I was like, we are the best at this. Like, we are badass. We can throw down drinks. Like, we're a cool, tough family. And then the layers started being peeled back. I started seeing what it was doing to my dad, and I was like, there is not a drop of cool in this. There's nothing cool about this. This is all just to make me believe that I'm cool. Without this, I'm much better. Like, it just weighed me down, held me back. But as far as like my family dynamic and stuff like that goes, whenever it switched over to becoming like a family thing, it just kind of felt like we were all being tagged into a wrestling ring eventually, you know? Like, it was, okay, my brother and sister picked up when they were young, and then the torch was passed to me at 17, and I really hope that it dies with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, because I know your niece and nephew, and I hate to see that happen. I know when I worked at Morning Star, so she was a big part, you know, of the groups that I've worked with there and that, so.
Yeah, I told her the other day, actually, it's funny you say that, but I told her the other day when she was hitting me up on Snapchat, she was like, I'm just going to stuff these feelings down. I said, don't do that, babe.
Yeah.
That's how you become a drug addict like your uncle. Don't do that.
Right on.
That's good advice.
So what kind of advice do you have for the loved ones of with people with addiction?
Oh, man.
We kind of do the family wellness thing here real quick. What do you got for them?
So, and I'm going to go back to my sister again, and I hope she doesn't listen to this, honestly, because I'm kind of singing her praises an awful lot.
We'll make sure she does.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah, you're on it.
Hey, what's okay. But she handled everything about as perfectly as she could have with me. And my advice to loved ones would be, first of all, don't continue to be a safety net for your loved one and continue to catch them before they hit their rock bottom. Let them hit it. I'm not saying that you have to watch them die necessarily or anything like that, but don't save them every time that they're about to approach their rock bottom just because you love them so much. If you love them that much, let them hit their rock bottom and help them pick up their pieces and get to treatment or something like that. My sister knew that I needed to get sober way before I did. She understood that I drank just like her, which was way worse than my parents drank. Because my sister and I took rips off the bottle and would just chug it until it was gone. My parents would make mixed drinks and stuff like that. So, like, we took what they gave us and we improved upon it in the wrong way. We started drinking an awful lot that way. So, sorry, what was the original question?
Any advice for the family members?
Yeah. So my sister, though, we went from drinking buddies to her getting sober, and like I alluded to, me being pretty rude about it, to then my sister just kind of loving me from a distance, know when to get the kids and leave, you know, and when to engage. And she just waited there, man. She waited there for me until finally that night I called. But she didn't push it on me because she knew if you come at your loved one and you say, hey, you need help, nobody responds well to that, man. Mm-hmm. They have to accept it inside of themselves first. And you could probably toss out little Easter eggs around and stuff and let them discover them on their own. But no, as far as like trying to get them into treatment or make them do something, you're only going to push them further and further away. It's the same thing my mom did with God to me at a younger age. She just kept trying to push the Catholic God on me, and it just kept creating this separation between the two of us. And if my sister would have tried to come at me that way, it would have done the same thing. And truthfully, I don't know if I'd be alive, because it would have been like, oh, I'll show you. Which is actually really funny. Back to another story with my sister, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
So the first time I got out of treatment, like I said, I didn't know what recovery was still. I didn't know what was required of me or anything like that. I just wanted to get control over the substances back. And I went to one of my niece's softball games. My sister's there, obviously. I'm hanging out, and I'm like, man, it's cool. I'm at my niece's softball game. I normally say I'll show up and don't come because I'm drunk or something. And towards the end of the doubleheader, I looked at my sister and I said, hey, Krista, I think I can drink again. And she just looks at me and goes, cool, try. I was like, she doesn't, man, she thinks she knows me. I can't wait to prove her wrong, man.
Right.
On the way home, I stopped by the gas station by my house. It's a mobile, literally 1.2 miles away from my home. I got a pint. I drank the pint before I got in my driveway, so I turned around and went back. Still going to prove her wrong, because tomorrow I'm not going to drink. It's just going to be one night of drinking, and I'm good for a while. And then I get the other pint, and then I drink that as I'm getting to my house. So I just went ahead and went back and got a fifth. And that was when stuff got really dark. But I begged for help again. My sister answers the phone and goes, just so you know, this is the last time that I will be taking you to treatment. Next time you'll have to figure this out on your own. Fair enough, lady. This is your fault. I for real blamed her. I dead ass blamed my sister for me having to be back in treatment again. All because she encouraged me, go ahead, try. She gave me her AA big book, and I went into treatment the second time. I was mad at her for 7 days, truly blaming her for being back in there. And I opened up more about alcoholism. And I'm reading that chapter. In there, she has triple underlined and circled, if you think you can drink, try. Go to the nearest bar room. Drink. Stop abruptly. Triple underline and circle. I was like, she got me. I called her that night, and I was like, damn.
That was good.
You got me good.
Ain't gonna happen again.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, I'm coming back stronger.
Oh man.
Don't relapse. I'm on your heels, lady.
So we talked. What do you think are some common misconceptions about addiction and recovery? Like, what are some things that you think about, recovery that you would like to dispel? Maybe some things that you learned while in recovery.
Everybody's rock bottom looks different, I would say, is where I would probably start. Everybody's rock bottom looks different. Just because you weren't out on the streets doing favors for drugs or whatever it is, doesn't mean you don't have a serious problem. Everybody's rock bottom looks a lot different. So that's probably where I would start with the misconceptions. Also, alcohol is a drug, period. I know it says it in the NA literature, but alcohol is a drug, period. There's no, just because it's legal, hey, marijuana is legal now too. All of these things, if you abuse them, you're an addict. I'm sorry. Deal with it. You are an addict. So I would say you don't have to abuse drugs to be an addict. Alcohol is a drug. You don't have to, be homeless to have a problem. Everybody's rock bottom looks a lot different. Also, getting sober doesn't make you lame. It's not all dorks in recovery, okay? It's a lot. It's the same cool people. And actually, it's some of the coolest, most interesting, intelligent, talented people that you'll ever meet in your life are the people who fill the rooms of AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery. I've never been to Refuge, but I bet it's the same there. These people are wildly talented and really, really cool. And yes, we identify ourselves as, hey, I'm Casey, I'm an alcoholic, or hey, I'm Casey, I'm an addict, but I'm also so much more than that. It's not just that I'm that. I don't know. There are a lot of misconceptions. We could go on all day about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do a whole podcast just on misconceptions.
Yeah.
Hey, so what kind of relationship do you have with your higher power?
Oh, man. So that has been
You do have a higher power, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how's that
Work
changed
steps.
through time?
Well, here's the deal, man. It's funny. Recently, it's changed an awful lot, and I think it's because I've actually been working the program the way it was intended. For the most part. I'm not perfect. I definitely mess up. I've been on step 4 for way too long.
I don't know anyone that's done that.
What?
Been on step 4 too long.
Yeah. I can come up with a bunch of excuses, some of which are valid, but the main one is I've been fearful and dragging my feet. But so what was the exact question?
Your higher power.
My higher power. Okay,
Yeah.
so My higher power and I's relationship has changed an awful lot. And at first, like I told you and I alluded to, I denounced God and any sort of belief in him when I was about 17 and my dad went back to drinking. I decided that that wasn't for me. I was a very avid atheist and I wanted to disprove everyone who believed in anything. That created quite the barrier for me whenever I walked into the rooms of recovery. It just started with Me Sober Tomorrow. Me Sober Tomorrow is where it started. And it evolved over time. It was the power of the group. It was the universe, nature, ebbs and flows as one together. And then I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, I was driving home and I saw these clouds and the light bursting through it. And I referred to my higher power as God for the first time out loud. And I was like, whoa, my relationship with my higher power is starting to look a lot like a relationship with a God. And I pray now to what exactly, I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. It's not like a Christian Judeo God yet, or maybe it won't ever be. I'm not positive. But I'm allowing myself to be open-minded for the first time about it and just letting it happen, letting it grow, trying to keep my mouth shut, my ears open, and just see where the wind blows me.
I love that.
Yeah, kind of one of the interesting things I've heard through the rooms. I came in, I was an atheist. No way. And then you see, 5 years later, they're like, yeah, I got it now. One of my good friends passed away a couple years ago. Stevie D, he'd always say, if you work the steps right, you'll find God. You don't have to push on someone. If you work the steps, it'll be there at the end. I just always kind of remembered that from him.
Oh, yeah. They say God is everywhere. He is. The moment I started looking for him, I found him. Like, the moment I really opened my eyes and started being open-minded about stuff, I started finding a higher power that was, hey, man, this is wild. I remember being at the aviary even the first time before I really bought into recovery at all, but seeing all these coincidences is what I used to call them. And I was just like, this is crazy, man. Like, how is all this stuff happening? And then this one dude, I'll never forget, his name was Josh. He would come up to me whenever stuff like that would happen because he was hardcore Bible thumper. And him and I, we just couldn't talk about stuff like that because we didn't get along. We each wanted to try and recruit the other one to our team. The Bible and all these different coincidences, I would say, would happen. And he would just walk up to me as they would happen. He'd see him and he'd go, hey, Casey, is that odd or is that God? And at first I was like, man, stop. Like, stop trying to convert me. Stop all that. And then it happened enough to where I was like, it's probably God. I don't know anymore. I can't prove what it is, but it's outside of my understanding big time, and science can't prove it. Like, these things are wild what's happening.
It's funny because I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, you do.
I want to go back just a second. I want to know your view on addiction. Do you consider it a disease? Do you consider it a choice? Do you consider it something else? And what are your thoughts on the stigma surrounding addiction?
That's another thing that's evolved throughout my journey here, because I used to say, no, it's not a disease. And a lot of that came from me being an angry kid and being like, yo, my parents were alcoholics and like they chose that. They chose against me, or they didn't love me enough to change. I was like, no, man, it never had anything to do with me. But addiction and like my personal definition of it.
Sure.
I think is an addict is anyone who picks up a substance to cure what ails them. So like if it's with your intent, I'm big on what's your intent. If your intent behind using is to numb your pain or to exit your reality, you're probably an addict, or you're on your way and it's probably too late.
I can dig it, yeah.
Ask me another one, Mike. I didn't answer your real question.
You did not. Do you see it as a disease or a choice?
So I did see it as a disease. Recently I started to see it as a disease. And it was really hard for me to make that. But finally, as we start talking about, everybody talks about diabetes and stuff like that, because I do believe it is a choice that becomes a disease. So like you choose to do this and then it gets its hooks in you and then it becomes a disease like diabetes.
You make the choice for the first drink.
Yes.
After that, then the lot's cast.
Yes, once you're alcoholic, but I don't believe that all people are born alcoholic, Like, I don't believe that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, once, you have the gene, the whatever, that you have that addiction. it doesn't happen until you have the first drink or the first use.
That's not necessarily how I feel about it. I think that I don't know science, so like maybe I am wrong, but what I've always thought is that yes, there's a possibility that you carry that gene. If you start to act in nefarious behaviors, it will catch you in that way. But I also think you don't have to have the gene, and that it just its hooks in you with your intent. So you don't necessarily have the genealogical makeup to make you an addict. However, you start drinking because life's hard and there's suffering in life inherently. So people start to do that, and then boom, it takes control of them.
That's fair.
So, what can you say about your sponsor, your sponsorship? How many sponsees do you have?
I don't have any, man, and I don't want any, to be honest with you.
Is that part of step 12?
I love the honesty.
Ain't that what we're supposed to do?
I will
share what these spiritual awakenings that we have with others and help walk others through it.
I work in treatment, so I get to see all these people every day, people young and fresh in recovery. At this point in my recovery, I'm still getting my feet wet in the new position at work. So like when I say I don't want to sponsor, it's just right now. Like, I'm not ready in this moment to do it because I have too many other things going on. I just took over Mike's old position, you know, like I'm trying to grow in that way, trying to get actually certified, trying to get a caseload of my own here. So like I'm spinning a lot of plates. Also, I have a baby on the way. So like there are a lot of different moving pieces here. So I'm a little afraid to take on any more right now.
Okay, I get it. So tell us about your amends process. How many individuals have you had to make amends to, and how did that go? How is that going for you?
I'm on step 4. I haven't had to make any amends yet.
That makes sense.
So, and
gotcha.
I'll tell you, I got myself though, because I've been procrastinating this, because that's what I've really been afraid of. That's why I've been stuck on step 4, because I'm afraid of making the amends.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, you're supposed to check out your shortcomings and character defects and get rid of those first, right?
Yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Same here.
Well, that's good for you guys. This is Casey's interview. I'm talking with him.
You said that you pray, right?
Yeah.
And
crazy to hear.
Yeah, and I do know that you enjoy meditation. So talk a little bit about what your meditation and what your prayer looks like.
It depends on the day, really. What I really try to do now is when I wake up, I'll try and just have conscious contact really quick. I'll just be like, hey, I'm going to do my best to listen. Please guide me. And that's pretty much where I go. When I get perturbed throughout the day, I'll check back in and try and do that again if I'm mindful enough, if I'm not tripping too hard that day. Sometimes I trip and forget and make it all worse and just compound the problem, as my dad used to say.
Mm-hmm.
So...
You ain't doing no daily devos or no journaling, none of that kind of stuff?
I journal pretty often. It just depends. Like, it's when it calls me, though. It's not like I have this time to do it at this time. It just depends. Like, if I've had a long day, I'm like, okay, I need to get these feelings out. Or I need to go on a walk and go through these thoughts. That's been my meditation lately, honestly. And I'll leave my cell phone at home. I'll put my dog on her leash, and I'll go walk around the neighborhood and just let myself be with my thoughts for a while. Because whenever I'm really tripping and I'm on my way to a relapse, the first sign that I'm on my way to a relapse is I don't spend any time with my thoughts. I just listen to music or I listen to a podcast, and I don't spend any time with myself. Chances are, if I turn off the radio on my way home, I'm doing well. I'm just being with my thoughts and being okay. So every day I try to walk about an hour around the lake and just be with myself.
Right on.
And if I'm not comfortable with myself and I need to listen to a podcast, there's some real introspection that needs to happen.
Yeah, I can dig that. So you work in treatment.
Y'all.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your journey from addiction to working in recovery.
Man,
both times.
What a wild thing. So the first time I went to the Aviary Recovery Center, they were like joking with me about, hey, you should work here. You should work here. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, beat it. I'm not going to go to AA meetings. I'm not going to talk about God all day. Like, you guys can take a walk. And so then the second time I came back, much more humble, had a much healthier understanding of what, still had no real idea, but I had a much healthier understanding of what recovery was. And people started telling me, hey, man, you need to start working in recovery. I think it's going to be great for you. Whatever. And then I lost my job while I was in treatment. All the while, my higher power pulling these strings for me before I even knew what my higher power was. making all these things fall into place for me. And I lost my job right off the bat. I'm really upset that I lost my job. Hated that job. Worked third shift. Hated my shift. Hated everything about my life. Would drink at work because everyone kind of did. I would smoke weed at work because everyone kind of did. It was a terrible environment. I got, that job taken. I'm like, all right, well, I'll do this for a little while. I'll see where it takes me. I'll cash a paycheck out here for a little while. Help me stay sober. A little over 2 years later, I'm still at it, man. And like, it started as a recovery coach, and it just was a paycheck to me. I started on overnights, coaching while people sleep. I pop in their room, ping them while they're asleep. Bye-bye, never here. And then I started talking to these people, and I started like connecting with them, and I was like, oh man. And still at this point, like I'm not doing the program, like I'm not practicing what I preach, but I'm a decent preacher, I can make people believe it, man. I would have been a car salesman real well. So I'm talking to these people, and I'm getting them, like I feel like I'm doing a decent job talking to them, and this lit a fire in me. And before I ever really started truly digging into my own recovery, I found my purpose. And it's wild how it played out, because it's almost in reverse. You would think like I needed to completely buy in, get both feet in the water, but I didn't. And I had this light lit inside of me, like, this is what I'm meant to do. I don't know if it's necessarily in recovery, but I'm meant to help people in whatever capacity that I can.
Yeah, I love that.
So what are some of the biggest surprises that you've had in your recovery?
My biggest surprises in recovery probably would come down to, I don't know, man, dependability. Being dependable and knowing that people count on me, and hearing what other people say about me now, because it goes so against the grain of what I used to think of myself, and honestly what others used to think of me too. Casey's gonna flake. He said he's gonna be here. He's gonna text us 10 minutes before he gets here and say he can't make it. Whatever it is. Kate, my niece, he's gonna be at my softball game. Didn't show up. Like, we can't ask Uncle Casey to pick us up. My brother stopped letting me drive his kids because I drank so much. Like, I couldn't have his kids in my car. So having that trust and that dependability back, like, hearing people say things about me that I never would have imagined. Wow, Casey, you're tidy. What? Yeah, recovery brought me that, man. Like, that was everything about me was a mess, and I was totally opposite than what I am now. Like, polar opposite.
Cool. So we're getting a little short on time here. So what message of hope do you have for the addict out there?
Recovery is not only possible, it is probable, and all you have to do is do what's asked of you in whatever program you decide to work. If it's AA, that's awesome. It's going to work for you. If it's NA, that's great. It's going to work for you. CR, that's awesome. It's going to work for you. Just do it. Do what your sponsor asks of you. If you do the next right thing, we're always tripping over all these things that are outside of our control as addicts. That's something that's always in your control.
You had to go with the Jeremy cliche, though. Do the next right thing.
I heard that a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, we always make fun of Jeremy. Jeremy's Mr. Cliche. AA cliche.
Oh, yeah, we've met.
You met?
Yeah.
Right on. So it was good having you on the show, man. I'm glad you came and hung out with us.
Did you just power down for a second?
Did I power down? I don't know. What do you mean? Did I fall asleep? Just about, dude. Hey, it's almost my bedtime. We got a little late today because we did it for you. Blame him. Everybody blame
Thanks
Casey.
a lot.
Casey, at least you're not blaming me today.
I'm glad I could
I
take
got
it
a
off.
million more other things I could blame you about. See, but I'm not going to do it on the podcast. All right, well, no, we're going to wrap up. Everybody, Mike, something to share with the audience tonight about recovery, Casey, all that good stuff.
Just appreciate you coming on, man. I've been excited for this. I almost was not here. I was struggling with a migraine all day, so I'm glad I started feeling better. And, I appreciate your story, man. You've been with me in my entire recovery experience, and I love you, man. So I'm happy you're here. I appreciate it.
Love you, brother.
Absolutely.
Man, I just appreciate you coming out today, and hearing your story. These guys know, and the only part I know of your story, and I was sitting with Shane and Jeremy before they came and confronted you.
Oh,
when you said that, I'm clicking in my ears. I'm like going, that's who it was.
Mm-hmm. That was me, man. That was me drinking mouthwash for about 10 days.
That's exactly what I heard.
You betcha.
The good stuff.
What is it like having someone like Shane and Jeremy show up at your door?
thank God they're sober now. Like,
That's terrifying, man. It's like,
those two cats would have rolled up on me in active addiction. I would have been in trouble.
yeah.
I'm glad that I had the ordained minister versions of them.
Nice. Right on. Hey, Casey, man, I remember meeting you at Celebrate Recovery that time. I had no idea who you were. And then somebody had mentioned that I knew your sister. I'm like, dude, I had no idea. You remember when I came up to you that day? Because I said you were related to Christina. You're like, no, Krista.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I met, you know? But, hey, we're going to wrap up here, man. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Casey, man, we're glad you're part of this. Glad to be part of this program with you.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, without a doubt. You find a spot to listen to us. We're on every podcast platform. We're videos on YouTube. We got video on Apple Podcasts. Our video shows up. You ever seen that?
No, it's a beautiful thing, though.
We show up on our Apple Podcast. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we just thank you guys for joining us tonight. If you got any questions, if what Casey shared with you meant anything to you, reach out to us at info@awakensober.org. And we'll get back with you. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right. Thanks. Have a good night.